Hello everyone, this is V-Man. After 4 games worth of stagnation and a decade of near dormancy, the mainline 2D Mario series made its triumphant return with the release of Super Mario Bros. Wonder. This game features a myriad of improvements from its predecessors, including a vibrant art style, engaging level design, and, of course, the titular Wonder effects. To most Mario series veterans, all of these are major upgrades from previous titles, and make the game one of the best in the series, despite some other aspects being widely considered inferior, such as the bosses. However, one part of the game that has left Mario fans divided is the character roster. In this video, I will be discussing the roster of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, some common criticisms about how it was designed, and why I believe that the developers handled each of these aspects in the best way possible. With all of that said, this is my defense of Super Mario Bros. Wonder's character roster. Now, before getting into the common complaints players have about the game's roster, I must first discuss how the roster is handled. Super Mario Bros. Wonder has a whopping 12 playable characters, which can be divided into 3 categories. The first category are the 7 standard characters, being Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, Yellow Toad, Blue Toad, and Toadette. All of these characters play identically, and have been playable in a mainline 2D Mario game before. The only exception to this is Daisy, unless you count Super Mario Run, who makes her long-anticipated mainline playable debut here. The second category is just one character, being Nabbit. Nabbit is also a returning character, but he's an easier character to play since he takes no permanent damage with the trade-off of being unable to utilize power-ups. Finally, the last group of characters consists of 4 Yoshis, being Green, Red, Yellow, and Light Blue. Like Nabbit, the Yoshis take no permanent damage and cannot utilize power-ups, but can also flutter jump, eat enemies, and carry other players around. So with 12 playable characters, nearly every previous mainline character present, and some long-requested playable debuts to the mainline 2D games, what leaves some people dissatisfied with this roster? There are a few reasons for this that I think are worth covering. The first is that all 7 characters in the standard category play exactly the same way. For those who haven't played some of the older 2D Mario games or some of the more recent 3D titles, different characters have often had different attributes. For example, Luigi will often jump higher and stay in the air longer than Mario, in exchange for much lower traction, making him more difficult to control. Peach and Blue Toad also have their own useful abilities in other titles, with Peach having a hovering jump like she does in Super Smash Bros., and Blue Toad having a faster run speed. All of this helps give each character movement that feels more in line with their personality. Because of this, many people hope that all of the new and returning characters would have unique attributes in Wonder as well. That, of course, did not happen. Despite this, modders have found that each character has their own stat table in the code, just with all values being the same between characters, so it was likely planned at some point. So why did the developers stick with making everyone play the same when the framework for unique character playstyles existed? I believe that they decided that all characters should share stats to allow for levels to be more tightly designed, as that way the course designers would only need to worry about one standard jump height, falling speed, running speed, and traction when creating levels. If that's the case, I think they made the right call, since Wonder's, well, wonderful levels are only possible in part because of how well they work with the one moveset these characters share. Of course, now that I say that, I suppose you may be thinking, but these things aren't always consistent, because those can be changed by equipping badges. And you would be right, which brings me to the second reason these 7 characters sharing stats is good. That being, if a player wants to experience these characters with their unique attributes, they can do so to an extent by utilizing badges. Luigi with the floating high jump badge, Peach using the parachute cap badge, and Blue Toad using the fast dash badge are all very close replacements to their classic character-specific abilities. More creative players may even take this one step further by assigning appropriate badges to the other characters based on what they think their abilities would have been had they been playable in other games, such as Daisy with the boosting spin jump badge, Yellow Toad with the crouching high jump badge, or Toadette with the safety bounce badge. But the best part of having the core cast play the same way is that you're never discouraged from playing your favorite among them. If every character played differently, many players might think that their favorite character is not as fun to play as, forcing them to either pick a character that is less fun just because they like that character, or to pick a character they don't like just because they have a more enjoyable playstyle. Someone who likes Peach as a character, but prefers the higher top speed given to Blue Toad would be out of luck in Super Mario 3D World. But in Wonder they can choose Peach with the Fast Dash badge and get the best experience for them. Even players who want to play as more than one character benefit, since the skills they learn from one carry over completely to the other 6. It really is a situation where everyone wins. If you liked the video so far, please be sure to give it a like, and hit the subscribe button if you're really enjoying it. This will let me know if I should make more videos like this in the future. Thank you. But as I alluded to earlier, the homogeneity of the core 7 characters is not the only criticism that many players have about the Super Mario Bros. Wonder character roster. The second and possibly biggest criticism I've seen about the character lineup has to do with the Yoshis and Nabbit. More specifically, many people complain about how these characters are a forced easy mode for anyone that chooses to play as them, instead of being just as hard to play as the main 7, but with a different moveset. However, this is also something that I believe the developers made the right choice on. Their implementation in Wonder is quite faithful to how they have been portrayed in the past. For one, Nabbit's playstyle in Wonder is the same as it was in New Super Luigi U. The Yoshis in Wonder, likewise, play much like they do in their home series games such as Yoshi's Island. In both that game and Wonder, Yoshi can move similarly to modern Mario, has access to his tongue and flutter jump, and is himself impervious to most damage after a bit of knockback, but cannot utilize traditional power-ups. The biggest difference here is that Yoshi no longer has Baby Mario or eggs to keep track of, so using him in Wonder is a lot simpler. Of course, there are people who don't care much about what Yoshi and Nabbit used to be like if that means they can't play as their favorite dinosaur or funky looking rabbit thing without making the game a cakewalk. After all, I did just say that one of the strengths of the roster is the core 7 playing identically. However, as a huge Yoshi fan myself, I believe it's important to realize that these characters in Super Mario Bros. Wonder were not made for the Mario veterans. Instead, they were made for the people who are just starting out playing Mario games, or are new to video games in general. Someone who grew up playing video games may look at Wonder as a game that's already easy enough and does not need to be made easier with baby mode characters, without realizing that many new gamers may need the extra help getting started. These characters provide new players a forgiving starting point for their new adventure, allowing them to enjoy the game despite their inexperience. Now I know what some of you may be thinking. Why not just give these characters an easy mode toggle so players can choose how difficult it is to play as them? While that does seem like a good solution on paper, I still think that having certain characters be designated as beginner friendly is a more natural way to include the feature than a menu option. A difficulty toggle for characters would make the character selection process more difficult and confusing, especially for multiplayer. It would seem pretty unintuitive for one player to play as an easy mode Yoshi while another player's Yoshi could take damage. Additionally, most of the methods I have heard people suggest to make the easy mode characters more challenging run counter to how these characters are usually portrayed. The most popular idea seems to be giving the Yoshis and Nabbit health bars, similar to how it works in Yoshi's Woolly World, and having power-ups heal any damage inflicted. This would be an okay solution, but again, I don't think this should coexist with the no damage playstyle the current versions of these characters have. And for the reasons I mentioned before, I believe a health bar should not be included so that the Yoshis and Nabbit remain easier to play. Another idea I've heard is to have these characters behave just like the main cast, including taking damage normally, being able to use power-ups, and more. From my perspective, this idea has several flaws. First, this is very inconsistent with how they have been portrayed up to this point, as Yoshi and Nabbit have never been able to use the same power-ups as Mario, and rarely if ever go through normal power-up loss like Mario, such as only losing them when damaged, or shrinking when losing a power-up. For another thing, the more similar the Yoshis and Nabbit play to the standard 7, the more redundant their inclusions feel since a player can just play as one of the standard 7 instead. Sure, a player may want to play as Yoshi or Nabbit with the mechanics of Mario, but with characters that have traditionally had such widely different mechanics, I would say that anyone with this mindset just wants to play as Yoshi without actually playing as Yoshi. Eventually, it's important to recognize that two characters must be different for their inclusion to make sense, as opposed to the main 7, which all feel like worthwhile additions to the roster despite playing identically. That thought brings me nicely into the third and final reason some people don't like the roster of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and that is the characters they did not put in. The most common examples of requested characters are Wario, Waluigi, and Donkey Kong. While I'm not denying that it would be cool to have these characters playable in Wonder, I believe these characters are not well suited for the game. Instead, I think they should be reserved for their own series, as Wario Land and Donkey Kong Country would both help them play to their strengths much more than a mainline 2D Mario game ever would. Of course, that would require Nintendo create new entries in those series, but a discussion about that is beyond the scope of this video. In summary, I believe that the character roster for Super Mario Bros. Wonder is exactly what it needs to be. This game has a character for everyone in terms of both personality and playstyle, and the implementation of those playstyles allows the tightness of the level design and the variety from the badge system to shine. While I do agree that it would have been fun to play through the game with the characters being different than how they are now, any steps that could have been taken to this end would have caused the game to lose so much more for it. That is why I think that this character roster is perfect for the game that Super Mario Bros. Wonder is. And with that, my defense is complete. What are your thoughts on Super Mario Bros. Wonder's character roster? Do you believe that the roster for the game was handled well, or should more have been done to make it live up to its potential? Let me know in the comments. I know this video is coming out quite some time after Wonder was released, but I think the topic is still relevant enough to talk about, especially since I'm sure the game will be discussed for many more years if past Mario games are any indication. Again, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more content like this. With all of that said, this is V-Man, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.